Welcome to the American Diversity Report podcasts, where we interview diverse change makers and inspiring innovators. I'm Deborah Levine, editor of the American Diversity Report and your host. And with me today is the Reverend Frederick Davie. He is a senior advisor for racial equity at Interfaith America, where he executes programming with a primary focus on the intersection of race and religion. He is also a minister in the Presbytery of New York City and recently served as the executive vice president at Union Theological Seminary. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. Let's start out by expanding on this bio and having you tell us a little bit more about what you're up to these days.
Sure, absolutely. Glad to. And again, thanks for having me. I spend the bulk of my time with Interfaith America. Interfaith America, which your listeners can find at interfaithamerica.org, is an organization that started as Interfaith Youth Corps by Eboo Patel. Its president and founder. Eboo's probably one of the smartest people I know, having a PhD from Oxford. But he'll tell the story about how he founded Interfaith Youth Corps when challenged by someone at an international meeting when he was criticizing the absence of young people in the interfaith conversation. He is Muslim by religion, and so he went out as a young Muslim guy to start Interfaith Youth Corps that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, and now finds itself encouraging interfaith cooperation, interfaith engagement in all aspects of American society. I've been with the organization probably for the last 13 years. I've known Eboo for that long. He and I actually met to know each other in the Roosevelt Room at the White House during the Obama administration, just as we were about to walk across the hall into the Oval Office to be appointed by President Obama to the White House Office of Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships. We spoke to each other then, and we've been talking since 2009. My work at Interfaith America focuses on two primary projects. Black Interfaith in America, the Black Interfaith Project, which is a project that seeks to understand the ways in which people of African descent in this country have worked and engaged together from different faith perspectives in the Black context. So these are the ways in which Black Muslims and Black Jews and Black Baha'is or Buddhists, along with Black Christians, have over the centuries worked and cooperated to contribute to the overall life of America. And it's a history that we don't know much about. We don't even know much about it current day. So the effort of this program is to sort of resurrect, excavate some of that history, also place a spotlight on the ways in which Black interfaith cooperation is happening in America today. So that's one project. The other one is called The Vote is Sacred. It has to do with focusing in on how important it is for human beings being made in a divine image to exercise agency. And one of the ways, because we believe as people who are made in that divine image, that we have choice, we have agency. One of the ways to exercise that is to vote. And to deny that to people, to suppress it, is to suppress that divine image, is to attack that divine image in some way. So we have an interfaith effort nationwide to draw attention to the sacredness of the right to vote, how fundamental it is to us as creatures of God, and to make sure that people have an opportunity to exercise that. So those are the two primary projects I work on. And then I just help to promote racial equity in an interfaith sort of context more broadly in my work with Interfaith America. I'll just mention I also continue to do some work with Union Theological Seminary, a place that was home for me for about 11 years, when I served as executive vice president. I continue to serve as a special advisor to the president on various projects there at Union, which I enjoy. And I'm doing a little bit of work on interfaith engagement with the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, through the midterms, and that'll go away at the midterms. I'll round this out by just telling your listeners, I have the privilege of serving on 3 commissions, one at each level of our existence here in the United States. So at the local level here in New York, I'm on the Racial Justice Commission. That commission is also a charter reform commission. Our commission has developed 3 ballot initiatives that will be on the ballot this fall, November 8th, to promote racial equity here in New York, and then that work on that commission will come to an end. I'm on a federal commission, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, appointed by Charles Schumer, the majority leader of the Senate. It's by law a bipartisan commission made up of 9 commissioners, and we focus on working with the White House, the State Department, and the Congress on advancing religious freedom around the world in U.S. foreign policy. And it's fascinating work. We actually had a meeting with Secretary Blinken yesterday about some of this in his office there in D.C. at the State Department. And then the final commission is a new one nominated by Governor Hochul for a new state commission on ethics and lobbying in government, confirmed by an independent review committee, and now serve as interim chair of that commission. That's an 11-member commission. We have 7 of those members now confirmed, but we have begun our work. So it's all rewarding, fulfilling, exciting, sometimes a little intimidating, but I think it speaks to my journey and where I hope I can both make a contribution and then continue to grow, even, at this stage of my life and career as I engage these various programs and projects.
Amazing. How did you get started in all this?
Yeah, well, I guess it started back in North Carolina, a little town called Belmont, where, when I look back on it, I realized that my life was ordered by, I think, faith and service. So the spiritual development and service. The churches in my little town were very much involved in the life, every aspect of the life of my town. The Black churches particularly, I grew up Presbyterian, generations of Presbyterians, which is kind of unusual for Black people in the South, Black people generally, but there's a long story there that I won't get into. But I grew up Presbyterian. My little church, along with the other churches in the community, were concerned about what was happening to the Black community in the town, concerned about the town in general. And as people of faith, we're very much engaged in addressing community issues of the city. And I just grew up with that as a part of my orientation. But I also grew up understanding that one calling that laid claim to me was this desire to leave this world a little bit better than I found it. I wouldn't have articulated that as a kid, but that was very much also a part of my DNA. So the combination of believing that, coming to understand that my faith had a claim upon me that required service and giving back, and then trying to live into that. When I went to college, I was a political science major, but I did a lot of religion courses. So I had a religion minor, if you will. And then when I graduated from college, one of my professors, who was a mentor, suggested, an Old Testament professor, actually, I love the prophets of the Hebrew Bible, suggested that I consider seminary. And so I did, and went first to Union Theological Seminary in Richmond, Virginia. It's Presbyterian, Union Presbyterian Seminary there, and then to Yale Divinity School. And I actually graduated from Yale. Came to New York, and right after graduating 40 years ago, and never left. I came to work for an organization called the New York City Mission Society. And in my denomination, you can actually be ordained to work in a nonprofit with all the rights of a minister, but your ordination and your work is to a nonprofit and not a church. So that's what I did. I was ordained to work as the assistant executive director of the New York City Mission Society. My mentor, Reverend Calvin Presley, took me under his wing. And then I, over the years, working with him and others, just got sort of embedded in the infrastructure in some ways of New York City political and nonprofit and ultimately philanthropic life. And I've sort of been in that ever since.
I have to say that when I was young and in New York still, one of my first jobs was working for an interfaith nonprofit.
Wow.
And
what was that?
I'm trying to remember the name of it. And I think it had roots in the Presbytery. And my job was to link young people in Harlem to internships in Wall Street.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it shaped the rest of my life.
That's nice. Yeah. Well, we did. The New York City Mission Society certainly did some of that work as well. We did actually just that. We linked young people from various neighborhoods around the city, mainly young people of color, to opportunities for engagement in corporate America, particularly Wall Street, but other things as well, opportunities to volunteering communities, opportunities for further educational growth. We did college fairs, the whole bit, the gamut of what it would take for people to thrive in the city. And the organization continues. I think it's the oldest existing social service agency in New York City. But that got me my start.
I love it. It's amazing that you get to do some major things for people, but it also does something major for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Creates a mindset forever.
Yes, it very much speaks to, it helps to order one's life, in this case, my life. It speaks to things that are fundamental, that really, the sort of ultimate things that matter. And it's coming out of that orientation, out of those ultimate things that really matter, that we make an effort to engage in this work. In those days, it was through the nonprofit world and the interfaith and ecumenical world. I did a lot of organizing around housing issues in Brooklyn. It was ecumenical, but it was also interfaith.
Of course.
Yeah.
Right. That was what needed.
Yeah, no. And one of the people that I worked with, who remains a friend to this day, was a young rabbi in Brooklyn at the Brooklyn Heights Synagogue by the name of Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who now is the president of the Union of Reform Judaism. And I just went to Israel with him and a group of African American leaders.
Love it. I think we've actually met. And I'm trying to remember how, but yes, he's an amazing individual.
He really is. But that was a start.
That was a few years ago.
Yeah, no, it was a few decades. I think we figured it was about 35 years ago. It would take a few years.
I love it.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. And it's
the world of do-gooders, right? We like to stay in touch, and we'd grow, and you develop more programming, and all of a sudden somebody we haven't seen in decades, it comes through the front door. Hi, I'm working on it too. It's an amazing world that I'm so glad that we're able to share with our readers at the American Diversity Report, which is now celebrating its 16th year.
Congratulations. That's great.
Thank you. And it's an amazing podcast also, which is several years old, that reaches across the world, because that's what we want to do,
Mhm.
local and global, and that's exactly who you are.
Thank you. Yeah, no, thanks. And it's great work that you do, and really appreciate the contribution you're making to further this interfaith and diverse engagement that the world so desperately needs. And it's who we are.
It's,
It's really who we
it
are.
is indeed. And tell us a little bit about why you feel that a religious diversity is a foundational to America's strength.
Right. Well, one of the things that Ibu Patel is fond of saying, and it's true, that America is the world's first religiously diverse democracy. And, the people who uh, helped start this imperfect experiment really did it with the notion that there should be a land and a place where people of diverse faith traditions could come and not live under the dominance of any other faith tradition, but the allegiance would be to a government as opposed to a faith. Now, clearly, there have been so many ways in which that mark has been missed, but the ideal remains. There was Christian dominance in all of the downsides that have come with Christian supremacy in America. There's no question about that. But it's still a place where people continue to come of a variety of diverse backgrounds, because they knew embedded in this imperfect union and in this imperfect document were the ideals that were worth pursuing, and they remain worth pursuing. And I think they're ideals that speak to who we are fundamentally as human beings. And as a Presbyterian minister, as a person of faith, as a Christian, I believe that that this sort of spark of the divine that is in us, as I talked about earlier, this imago Dei, is best expressed in a democracy. It's where people best have agency, and faiths are best lived out, it seems to me, when they're not imposing their views on others, but engaged in a lively and vigorous conversation with other people about what it means to be people of faith. And then, again, as Ibu is fond of saying, as we say at Interfaith America, and then find those places, those things that we have in common that speak to and advance the good of all humanity. And let's work on those things together. And let's resist the urge to enshrine into law our particular theological point of views and the ways in which we choose to believe. Let's have space for that, for sure, but let's not try to enshrine that in the law. So it's an exciting time to be engaged in interfaith work, because it helps to solidify what is foundational and a bedrock to this religiously diverse democracy. And that is, there is space for in a actually fertile context for people of goodwill, people of faith, to come together and do good to advance humanity, to address the ills and the issues that are confronting us, again, without insisting on our approach to faith being actually enshrined in the law, but to have a really healthy debate about all of that, and to move this democracy forward, and thereby move its citizens forward and the citizens of the world forward. And that's an exciting project to be involved with.
Absolutely. So you're talking to somebody who was brought up in a British colony
where
the church was the state church.
Yes.
And coming to America as a young person and finding it all so very different.
Yes.
And I can remember getting into an argument in high school with young kids and losing it a little bit, saying, you do not understand the beauty of what you have. You have no idea, but you should.
Right, right, absolutely. And I will say, you know, as a Black man in America, as a gay man in America, I certainly know, as someone who grew up of modest means, I certainly know the limitations of this democracy, you know, but I also know the beauty of it. And I know that there is no other place in the world, at least at this point, and I hope this never changes in my lifetime or for decades or centuries to come, no other place in the world where I'd rather try to live out my call, my witness, you know, my sense of what it means to be a human being, than here, you know, on these shores of the United States of America, and to try to make this a more perfect union. And I've traveled all around the world, both personally and professionally, and I particularly have been able to have a more in-depth insight into religious life in countries around the world through the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. And I know from that perspective how unique this American experiment is, which makes me even more committed, particularly in light of events of the last couple of years and around the most recent election, to ensuring that we keep this diverse religious democracy intact, with an emphasis on democracy and an emphasis on the diversity of religion and the opportunity for people to be able to express those religious point of views. It means resisting, I think, Christian nationalism and this effort to conflate Christian faith with what it means to necessarily be American. The two can be complementary, but they're not the same. It also means working hard to make sure that we have a peaceful transfer of power when we have elections. And that's crucially and vitally important, it seems to me. And to do that in a diverse and interfaith way, to find other people of goodwill, other people of faith, and we do that in Interfaith America, particularly through our Vote is Sacred project, but other work as well. There is a bridge building work that that Interfaith America does, and you know, we're actually looking at an initiative that focuses on interfaith engagement and democracy, and how the two can and are complementary. But it's important to understand the real need for a peaceful transfer of power when we have these elections, in order for this democracy to cohere, in order for us to continue to maintain this context in this place where this diverse religious democracy can thrive and grow. You know, I'm excited to have this opportunity to do the work that I do, and I'm committed for whatever time I have left on this earth to making sure that this democracy becomes a more perfect union, and that opportunities are created around the world for people to live in healthy and productive, religiously diverse contexts, without the oppressive arm of the state or the oppressive arm of other religions coming to bear on them.
I totally agree about the religious diversity being central, you know, to our lives today, to being the democracy that we always hoped it would be. And religious diversity adds so much to our communities, to business, to everything that we do, our institutions. Can you tell us a little bit about how you feel that religious diversity is this asset that is underestimated, I believe, by so many?
Yeah, no, I think that, you know, there was a time, you know, when back in the 90s, early 90s, where I remember there were conversations in certain circles where people really believed that religion was going away. And I couldn't imagine what world these folks were living in. And then, and then there was charitable choice in the welfare reform legislation in the US in 1996, I think it was. There was, and then on the other side of that, there was the religiously based violence of 9/11. And all of that was a stark reminder to not only those of us in the US, but in the world, that religion is here and it's really here to stay. Religion has done a lot of harm, continues to do around the world and here in the US. There's no question about that. I don't even think that's debatable. But religion also does a lot of good and it can be a force for good. And again, if we focus on those tenets in most religions that call us to love and care for each other, to be concerned about the neighbor and the stranger, the widow and the orphan, all that sort of rich symbolic language about what it means to live in community together and what our charge is as religious people. And so it's incumbent upon those of us who understand those fundamentals of religion to help move us beyond the ways in which religion can do damage, and to claim and to cultivate and to utilize the best of our religious and spiritual traditions for the sake of humanity. Religion is not going away. It is not going to disappear. There's a mystery about our existence that calls faith, spirituality into being, and there are people of goodwill all around the world, and here in this country and other places, that want to harness the best of that to use it to promote humanity and human flourishing. And if we are not about the business of that, and in an intense and consistent and continuous and persistent way, then the other stuff will win. And that other stuff, we've seen the darkness of it, we've seen the destructiveness of it, and it can't have the order of the day. So let's defeat the things we hate, to quote again Eboo Patel, by building the things we love. And human flourishing and the opportunity for all people to flourish is one of the things that I love. And I want to try to spend some time helping to build that in an interfaith context with people of different faith traditions who support that vision.
Oh, I love it. It's wonderful. The phrase comes to mind, brother by another mother.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Very good. Yes. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness. This is always, for those of us embedded in this work, not a job. It is a passion. It is part of us. It is who we are. And that gives people the ability to trust in us and what we do. And I'm going to probably be quoting you for a long time to come.
Well, I quoted a lot of other people in the process, but thank you. Yeah. Right.
Well, is there anything you would like to add that we haven't covered?
I don't think so. I just appreciate this opportunity. I would encourage your listeners to, take a look at Interfaith America, interfaithamerica.org, pretty easy. Also to take a look at Union Theological Seminary that I didn't talk a lot about, that is engaged in interreligious education and now a great relationship with a number of faith traditions, a long-term relationship with the Jewish Theological Seminary, which is right across the street.
Yes.
That is utsnyc.edu, utsnyc.edu. So I'd encourage people to take a look at that work. I'd also encourage folks to just look at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. That's usurf.org, U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. I think all these organizations and institutions are about promoting religious diversity, religious cooperation, interreligious cooperation and engagement. And it's just all so important to the life of this world and to humanity.
Thank you. It's wonderful to hear from you and your work. Best wishes, your progress moving forward in these challenging times.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do to help promote diversity, and particularly religious diversity, not only here in the US, but around the world.
Indeed. So thank you again. And thank you, readers, for tuning in once again to the American Diversity Report podcasts. I know you're going to enjoy listening to this one many times over. Thank you.